If your yard is boring, this is why. So here are 5 common mistakes we see homeowners make that make their yard unusable and just not a fun place to be. So I'm gonna give you a list so you can make sure to avoid making these same mistakes and create a space you actually want to live in, want to spend time in. And on top of that, I'm gonna throw in a few tips on how to create an amazing yard. Number 5, choosing the wrong materials. Materials are so important. And I think so many homeowners focus on, okay, what is the layout? What are all the items I want? And they forget that materials are the icing on the cake that can make or break it. And what we see a lot of times are materials that don't work together. So maybe one material looks great on its own, but is not taking into consideration how does this one combine with another one. Another possible problem that you could have is not seeing material in the light. A lot of times we choose materials in really nice showrooms. They have bright lighting, but it is not sunlight. And when you take it into the sunlight, it's actually a totally different color. So how do you avoid choosing the wrong materials? Well, make sure you get all your samples. Almost every store will let you bring samples home, put them all together. You want to really check for harmony of texture and color. And not only that, make sure you put them together in the sunlight, watch them throughout the whole day. Only after that can you be sure that you've chosen the right materials. Number 4 is substandard lighting. So lighting is one of the things that I think is when it's great, you really notice it. And when it's not, you feel like something's missing, but you're not quite sure why. And the reason that I see a lot of homeowners making this mistake is that yes, lighting is an additional cost and typically it's done at the end of the project. So a lot of times you've already kind of gone through your whole budget, you've spent a lot of money and you feel like, oh, I really don't feel like investing the extra money to have lighting. Maybe it's not that important. But why is it so important is that you get a totally different experience. You get to double the use and really the joy out of your yard if you invest in proper lighting, because at night it creates a whole different vibe, a whole different environment if there's proper lighting. Now, it could be something as simple as making sure there's adequate landscape lighting to really kind of frame the yard and show how big it is, or just having key lights that really spotlight specific architectural features. But like I said, if you make that investment, and like I said, it is an investment, it will absolutely be something you will not regret in your yard. Number 3, choosing the wrong features. So it's very important as you're putting your wish list together, and when we work with clients, we always have every client give us a full wish list of everything they'd love to see in their yard. So when you're putting that together, it's very important to understand that there's a wish list and there's a reality. Now, what do I mean by that? But that maybe everything you have won't fit in the space you have. Now, this is a big issue we see with a lot of our homeowners, especially who live in a tract home and your yard is just not a huge space. If you have a wish list of every item and you want to include that, now you absolutely can cram everything into that space, but that's the key word, cram. And that's not how you achieve a beautiful design. So really understanding that maybe your space cannot accommodate all these features. So out of your top 15, what would be, the top 5 or the top 8 that you have to have, and understanding that actually if you remove some of these, you're gonna have a better backyard. So just making sure to understand that maybe you don't need everything on your wish list if you do not have the space for it, and understand that you could actually spend more money and almost ruin the look if you're very convinced that you have to have all these features. So number 2 is not understanding proportion. Now, proportion is so important because if you don't have a sense of how does for example, this pool interact with this patio, or how does this sunken space interact with this outdoor kitchen? If we don't have a sense of proportion, it's very easy for a certain area to feel overly large and another area to feel overly tight. This happens quite often where sometimes the swimming pool will be so huge, and in comparison, the lounge area is very tiny. And then homeowners have come back and said, wow, I wish I had kind of thought through the fact that the swimming pool is a little bit too large for my needs, and I wish I would have allocated more space to the lounge area because I love to host parties, I love to have people over. So that's something very important to understand, is all the proportions should be fully discussed and worked through with your designer, which is an important part of our conversation to make sure that you don't have any regrets about the space allocation. So before I share the most common mistake we see people making in their yards, make sure to subscribe to our channel, and it lets us know that you want us to keep creating videos like this with design tips on how to make an amazing yard. The reason this is number one is that I've seen so many homeowners where they have covered mistakes. They've made sure they have not made mistakes 4, 5, 4, 3, and 2, but they still were not able to achieve number one. And that mistake is not having a wow factor. Now that is absolutely the hardest one not to make, because first of all, what is a wow factor? It means a lot of different things to a lot of people, but the way we define it at Foxterra is that your yard has a wow factor if it has a sense of explorability, an element of surprise, if it makes you feel kind of wonder and amazement. And it can be so many different things. It could be a fire feature, maybe that's juxtaposed with a water feature. It could be a spa that turns into a multi-level pool. Like I said, the wow factor, what does that mean? It means a million different things, but you know it when you see it. And that's what we love to do. We're passionate about creating the wow factor, finding the wow factor, defining what the wow factor means to you. So I would say, to avoid making this mistake, make sure you work with designers that understand what is the wow factor and how can I bring it to your yard. So I hope you found these tips helpful. If you did, click the link in the description box to get started on your dream yard today. Or if you want more inspiration, here's another video that I think you'll enjoy.